So that's in there. So yes, the Obama administration looks foolish, but at the same time, you've got the specter, the ghost of the boogeyman bin Laden rearing its ugly head yet again.
So that's just a brief clip from wiseasserpents.com. And again, Frank Lordy also did great work on the controlled demolition of Washington Mutual. So again, a huge hat tip to all the great alternative media sites out there that MediaMonarchy.com looks up to. And again, it's all about us working together and sharing information while we still have the web as we do. Let's get into all the other related war horror updates. And I have them posted below this Afghan War Diaries post. And these are the things that, one, act as a perfect backdrop to the WikiLeaks story, but then also we're not talking about them as much. So from Global Research and Raw Story and Think Progress, U.S. war crimes, cancer rate in Fallujah worse than Hiroshima. The new study shows Fallujah's health fallout worse than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Just 50 miles from Baghdad, Fallujah's life has never been the same since April 04, when U.S. Marines declared the entire area a free fire zone and proceeded to do what Marines do best. Packing the most destructive weaponry in the world, American soldiers laid siege to the city, deploying depleted uranium munitions, white phosphorus, and tons of conventional ballistics. Operation Vigilant Resolve went on for a full month. Though U.S. forces allowed an estimated 70,000 women, children, and elderly leave the city, to this day the campaign to recapture Fallujah is beset with allegations of war crimes. All this in the wake of shock and awe, or Shekinah. There is renewed inquiries in the UK into the run-up, the trumped-up, faulty lies leading to war in Iraq. So more from the BBC. Former UN inspector Hans Blix, remember him? Well, he's back to remind us that the Iraq war was illegal. And then we connect to that from Press TV. 6 billion, that's in pounds in the UK, unaccounted for inside UK Ministry of Defence. The British MOD has been unable to account for more than £6 billion of equipment. The government's spending watchdog said the National Audit Office, Whitehall's spending watchdog, refused last Monday to sign off on the MOD's account for the fourth consecutive year in a row. Systemic and deep-rooted problems. Indeed. And again, these are the things that are all connected, that are all in the background, that all confirm all these things. And again, 9/11 being the elephant in the room, the blank check that all these war crimes are based on, at least in the 21st century. But you can't touch that. So that was in the UK, but we, of course, know that things aren't very different here in the States, where the U.S. cannot account for $8.7 billion in Iraqi funds.
How do you misplace billions of dollars? Details on the Pentagon's major money mishap in Iraq.
You heard it right, $8.7 billion missing, dates from 2004 to 2007. A new audit shows the U.S. Defense Department is unable to properly account for billions of dollars entrusted to it by the Iraqi government to rebuild a war-ravaged nation. We're analyzing coverage of the debate from MSNBC, HLN, CNN, and the LA Times. HLN explains the audit's findings.
A U.S. government audit blames the Defense Department for not keeping track of the cash. The report says the funds could have been used inappropriately. The Pentagon has not managed the funds since 2007.
On CNN, Arwa Damon reports on where the money came from and the difficulty in finding where it went.
This is actually Iraqi money. It's oil revenue. It's surplus left over from the Oil for Food program. That was a time when it was really complete chaos. I mean, people were walking around with suitcases full of money trying to get things done, and billions of dollars went missing. Billions of U.S. dollars went missing back then as well. And so it would be very hard to try to recreate what happened, especially given the chaotic and difficult circumstances here. And it does certainly appear that the money is just gone. So here we have a case where the Iraqis placed their trust in the U.S. and the U.S. has failed them.
And while the LA Times says fraud isn't suspected, no one really knows for sure. The improper accounting practices add to the pattern of mismanagement, reckless spending, and in some instances, corruption uncovered by the agency since 2004. So what do you think happened to all that money? Should the Pentagon be held accountable? And what should change going forward? I'm Chance Seals for Newsy.com.
War is a racket, just like Smedley Butler said. Now, your homework would be to Google pallets plus cash plus Iraq plus Bremer. GE to pay $23 million after Iraq bribery charges. More on that from the AFP. Sherwood Ross has a great article on veteranstoday.com. Again, not exactly a news story, but again, getting into the backstory of the CIA beyond redemption and should be terminated. But if we hop over to the FBI on WTOP, FBI scrutinized over test cheating. And again, the backdrop to the WikiLeaks story. They were able to parlay this just somehow magically into their favor and get more war funding. Now, fortunately, in the link to our own Oregonian here, Oregon Democrats all voted against more war funding, and I think that was Blumenauer and DeFazio and Wu. And yet, the House approved more Afghan war funding. U.S.-led wars to receive billions more. More from Press TV and antiwar.com. And we have the ex-CIA head back during the Bush II era, the previous puppet administration, where he notes that an attack on Iran seems inexorable.
When you left the CIA about 2 years ago, you said the two biggest problems facing your successor would be the Iranian nuke program and the drug smuggling and the violence from Mexico. Would you change either one of those?
No. To be accurate, counterterrorism was job one. Beyond counterterrorism, I would put counterproliferation as job two, and within counterproliferation, it is unarguably Iran. The growing problem, the one that was beginning to gnaw more aggressively at our attention, was what was going on in Mexico, and that began to become very visible to us about 2 years ago, and that's why I mentioned it as I was leaving office.
Do you think that there is any answer? I mean, Iran doesn't seem to be paying much attention to the sanctions. As far as we know, they're still trying to get nuclear capability. If it should, is there any alternative to taking out their facilities?
It seems inexorable, doesn't it? We engage, they continue to move forward. We vote for sanctions, they continue to move forward. We try to deter, to dissuade, they continue to move forward. My personal view is that Iran, left to its own devices, will get itself to that step right below a nuclear weapon, that permanent breakout stage, so the needle isn't quite in the red for the international community. And frankly, that will be as destabilizing as they're actually having a weapon. When I was in government, what we would euphemistically call the kinetic option was way down in our list. In my personal thinking, I need to emphasize that, I've begun to consider that may not be the worst of all possible outcomes.
Ex-CIA Hayden still beating the war drums for a war and an attack on Iran, and also bringing up the specter of the brewing border war, race war, in the southern sector of the coming North American Union. But more on that later. We still have more war horrors updates. 8-year-long ban on sex trafficking in war zones never enforced. U.S. government contractors may be engaging in sex trafficking in Iraq and Afghanistan, but officials in Washington appear to be taking no action despite a law created to discourage the illicit behavior. According to the law approved 8 years ago by Bush II, the government is supposed to prosecute contractors who buy or sell humans and then ban the contractors from doing federal work. Agencies claim they don't have the resources to pursue companies accused of such charges. Human rights groups refuse to believe the inaction on the part of the government is due solely to limited resources. And a little more homework for you. Of course, you should be quite familiar with the clip of Cynthia McKinney grilling Rumsfeld and Myers on sex trafficking, as well as some pesky questions about 9/11 war games and terror drills.